All right, back to it. Okay, so our next reader is Elissa Washuta, and she is a member of the Cowlitz Indian tribe, and is the author of My Body is a Book of Rules and Starvation Mode. Those are two separate books. Her work has appeared in Salon, the Chronicle of Higher Education, The Weekly, BuzzFeed, and elsewhere. She has received a Potlatch Native Arts Grant and an Artist Trust Gap Award, a Ford Culture Grant, and a Made at the Hugo House Fellowship. She serves as advisor for the Department of American Indian Studies at the University of Washington and is nonfiction faculty for the MFA program at the Institute of American Indian Arts. She was born in New Jersey and lives near Seattle, and she's currently working on a new essay collection.
Yeah.
And also, she's involved with the Lit Crawl, I believe, right? And that's happening next week,
October 22nd.
October 22nd, where you hear readers and at bars, and you get to go to different ones and hear them read, and it's great. So you all should go to that. I also just had a really great conversation with her about our mutual interest in tarot reading. And she gave me some good advice at a website, trulyteachmetarot.com. And we kind of worked through what the moon card means, because there's like a lobster on it, and I never know what. And then if you looked on the Facebook page, you notice there's a question on there that every reader had to answer, which is, what does your muse look like? And Elissa's was the High Priestess from the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. And that is a beautiful card. And I kind of think she lucked out. Because I sort of feel like my muse lately has been like a Ten of Swords, if you know what I mean. So anyway, I think I've blabbed enough. So here's Elissa Washuta.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I love Castalia intensely. When I was in the MFA program, I was one of the Castalia organizers and the host on the stage. And it makes me really happy to see you guys doing such awesome things with it. So thank you. I'm going to read from My Body as a Book of Rules. And I'm going to read excerpts of a chapter called Preliminary Bibliography, which I wrote while I was in the MFA program. I took a class with Carolyn Allen, who is magic, and she allowed me to, it was a literature class, but she let me do a creative final thesis, which was also magic. So yeah, I'm going to read some from the beginning, some from the end, some from the middle, and just want to let you know that there is quite a bit of mentions of rape and anorexia in this, so do what you will with that. Preliminary bibliography. Various picture books about mermaids. As a small girl, I was not allowed to collect women's lingerie ads from the newspaper circulars. And I was told to clean out the images of the busty Jessica Rabbit from my desk. But I was never denied the pleasure of reading picture books about mermaids, whose breasts were cupped by seashells or draped with long hair. All the strange anatomy below the flat stomach and delightful navel was consumed by a fish's body. Fish, unlike breasts, I knew. My father gutted them at the hatchery every day for post-mortem diagnosis and sometimes kept their livers in the basement freezer for later study. For Halloween twice, I was a mermaid, but I didn't really want to be one. I wanted to touch my hands to them. Juvenile nonfiction about sharks. A shark could tear me apart. A shark is bigger than my bed, my bedroom, maybe my one-story house before the addition. In the books, there were photos of cages that were meant to protect divers from sharks. I saw a cage in a museum and understood there is no protection from sharks. Juvenile nonfiction about shipwrecks. Books about important shipwrecks adhere to the facts. How many passengers were on the Titanic, where the Lusitania was when it went down. I could not fathom the thought of the bottom of the ocean then. I pictured the ghostly remains of a sunken ship from The Little Mermaid. Books adhered to the facts, but the unsaid truth had to be that mermaids swam between the rotting beams. I outgrew the books, but at 13 I saw Titanic and cried because love always failed. And massive ships could sink, and Leo DiCaprio's face was too perfect to exist. Hollywood could not convince me that majestic ships could really go down like that. I had to grow up before I understood that smooth sailing means nothing. When Kate Winslet's land mermaid body appeared naked on the screen, my friend asked me why I stared. Joanna Cole, asking about sex and growing up. Is it normal to be curious about growing up? Is it okay to ask about sex? Yes and yes, but only at home. At school, the nun will talk about the silver chalice of adulthood that the man and his wife pull out of the lake. Why are girls' and boys' bodies different? What sex organs does a girl have? Can a girl see her sex organs? What is the first change that happens to girls? How do breasts grow? Many of the line drawings crafted by Alan Tygreen, illustrator of Beverly Cleary's Ramona books, have taken a place in my memory as though they were real flesh, instead of thin lines and blank space. I looked harder at the girl drawings, the modest breasts, mounds of pubic hair, stages of development. I was somewhere between the child picture and the young woman picture, but somehow even the adult breasts seemed not to have reached their potential in my comparison to the robust New Jersey sets around me. What would I grow up to be? Do kids ever have crushes on someone of the same sex? By the time I was reading the book, my girl crushes were long gone, having given way to scrutiny, admiration, and comparison, crushing gone rotten. Why do people have sexual intercourse? What is a virgin? Do people ever make love with people they don't know well? What is sex abuse? What is rape? What is the difference between okay touching and sex abuse? How can kids protect themselves from sex abuse? What should you do if you are sexually abused? Near the end, Joanna Cole writes, "The most important thing to know about sex as you grow up is to respect yourself and others." I learned about tampons, testicles, umbilical cords, locker rooms, and ejaculation. Why didn't her final message stick? Francesca Leah Block, I was a teenage fairy. I kept reading books from the young adult section of the library after I began slushing through poetry as a teenager, trying to be an adult reader, because Block's magic was still more appealing than the bonds of meter. I was allowed to fall in love with the girls and the boys in the books. I was allowed to want to leave rural New Jersey because, quote, Los Angeles is a woman reclining billboard model with collagen puffed lips and silicone inflated breasts, a woman in a magenta convertible with heart-shaped sunglasses and cotton candy hair. I wanted to be one of the beautiful, underweight, tragic girls in a Francesca Leah Block novel. I read her books after my bipolar mood canyons were carved, but before I fell all the way into them, hit by jagged rocks on the way down. After leaving home, after I grew to legal maturity, I became what I always wanted to be: starved, mentally ill, tortured from the outside in and the inside out, city dwelling, fast driving. I never regretted asking for this. Reading the book again after the rape, the diagnosis, the drugs, the other assault, I understood that this book glimmers not because of a delightful magic. It is more like psychosis. Bradley Wilcox, Craig Wilcox, and Makoto Suzuki, the Okinawa diet plan: get leaner, live longer, and never feel hungry. All books change me, but diet and self-help books try to force the change to show. The results, success or failure, appear on the body. I adhered to the diet and lost a lot of weight my sophomore year of college. It probably wasn't the book that put me into starvation mode, but my misreading. I thought I needed to reduce my calories to 700 daily. My body was slight and perfect when I snared an acceptable boy. It was weak and starved when he pinned me down. I lent the book to a friend. I changed my diet like I changed my sheets. Leslie Marmon Silko, Ceremony. I can't blame my anthropology professor for getting excited about my enrollment in his North American Indians class. I was into it too. I wanted to learn all I could, and he was lonesome for the Indians, being too old to go play with the people in the Southwest who had fed him funny drugs and chuckled when he ran around at right angles. He told me he admired our ways. I didn't think he knew about my way of sleeping until noon, my way of keeping a pitcher of Kool-Aid spiked with Everclear in the fridge, or my way of crushing hard on my TAs and stalking their office hours. So I just thanked him for the compliment. I started every novel on the recommended reading list. The stories of days gone by might as well have been Shakespeare. For my final paper, I settled on Ceremony and ordered myself to become enamored. It was the newest book on the list, it was riddled with poems, and it was short. I read the first 40 pages twice, and then caved and downloaded Cliff's Notes. I felt like a bad Indian. This book was part of my canon. But I knew nothing about the horrors of war, dry places, witchcraft, or drinking from places of true torment. For my final paper, I skipped Ceremony and handed in a personal essay about being a suburban Indian. I just don't get these books, I thought. They have nothing to do with me. And I worked on carving out my spot in the literary world. For the last year of college, I let out war whoops, dressed in feathers, and donned war paint so thick I forgot about the color of my skin underneath. My copy of Ceremony has only one line highlighted from my attempts at engagement. He's not full blood anyway. Mark Z. Danielewski, House of Leaves. I was jealous. Danielewski did whatever the hell he wanted. Different fonts and colors, sideways text in boxes, footnotes citing fake sources. My fiction was always Times New Roman, double-spaced, and the stories were always written in traditional narrative style in which one paragraph flowed into the next, and the characters always changed, or arrived, or learned. I wrote a paper. I emailed his agent and publisher to ask how the manuscripts arrived, and they said it looked the same then as it looked in my hands. It wasn't until I left college, began graduate study, and made academic choices of my own that I realized I could do whatever the hell I wanted to. F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby. I thought I wouldn't like it. I thought it was a dead white man book. In high school, I switched out of honors English to avoid reading it over the summer. But in college, when I realized I was going to be a writer, I let my teachers press the canon down into my brain. I began posing for photos for my future book jackets. I read Gatsby when I was beginning to lose my mind. I stood on a posh Northern Virginia balcony days after finishing the book, looking out at the green breast of the new world that was the DC metro area. I knew that I had picked out my own green light, that my brain would never love me back. But I still believed that one fine morning, Stephen King, Carrie. I adored Professor Saddlemeyer for putting this on the syllabus because it was a bold move. By senior year, I was tired of reading high-quality literature and was glad to have something trashy to read. On my booksread.xls spreadsheet, there is a month-long gap between my completion of this book for class and the completion of my next book for pleasure. Matching up that list with the list of my prescriptions filled at the University Health Center pharmacy tells me that the gap coincided with my potentially near-fatal reaction to the drug Lamictal. I was bedridden for 2 weeks with a fever of 103, and then covered in a rash, and then immobilized by Benadryl, and then put on lithium instead of Lamictal. I thought my life was over. Why read? To what end? Chuck Palahniuk, Fight Club. The summer after graduation, I read nothing. I drank soy milk, raspberry, flaxseed smoothies in the morning, tanned at the pool midday, worked in the afternoon, and went to bars in the evening. My doctor messed with my drugs because I was rapidly cycling through mania, depression, and mixed mania. I kept hydrated. I spent myself silly. I was about to move across the country and set up a new life in Seattle. It had been years since I read Fight Club, but I still remembered Tyler's words. If you lose your nerve before you hit the bottom, Tyler says, you'll never really succeed. Only after disaster can we be resurrected. It's only after you've lost everything, Tyler says, that you're free to do anything. I lost all I could. I moved to Seattle, but I had a nice life, and I hadn't lost enough, so I still wasn't free. Then, under cloud cover, I lost my tan. Mark Hyman, Ultra Metabolism, the simple plan for automatic weight loss. During the spring of my second year of grad school, I returned to the book that was once my anorexic Bible. My wallet had just been stolen, and days later I knocked a full mug of coffee into my laptop. I was making no money and finishing a graduate degree that would help me make even more no money. Don't worry, it's not that bad. I wanted the situation to get more desperate so I could finally hit bottom and then climb back out. Sometimes I think I'm stable, and sometimes I think I'm closer to the bottom than I realize. Hyman gave me some ideas. I would eliminate refined sugar. I would incorporate flaxseed and other sources of omega-3. I would minimize my exposure to toxins and eliminate factors that cause inflammation. My body would be mine again, underweight again, sleek again. I could not unrape myself, but I could make myself wanted and flawless, could fix the body so that I could be certain that the body is not the problem here. One by one, even if I had to make myself an unrecognizable line drawing of my normal likeness, I would knock down every problem. Thank you. Knock it down, Elissa.
Well, I have the pleasure of introducing one of my top 4 favorite poetry faculty at the University of Washington, Pimone Triplett. And I particularly love Pimone because she's kind of a ghost hunter. Not a ghostbuster, though she could certainly take down the spirit Zool or even Gozer the Gozerian.
I would call it.
Yeah, I mean, I would call her too, let's be real. But the thing is, she's doing it the other way around. She attracts the supernatural. In her poems, her images call forth these echoes and hints, and they glitter and they haunt, and she arranges the concrete with the corporeal, and somehow they swarm together into this transcendental world of eternal and dead. Don't you want to spend Halloween with her? Now, as a teacher, she also seeks out these glowing specters in her students' poems, and she helps us transform these shapes and shades into radiant nodes. She's always attentive to the poem's direction, independent of the poet, and she revels in revealing the occult underlying our most mundane impulses. Pimone Triplett is the author of 3 books, Ruining the Picture, The Price of Light, and most recently, Rumor. She's been awarded the Larry Levis Poetry Prize and the Hazel Hall Poetry Prize. She teaches at the University of Washington, of course. Please join me in welcoming Pimone Triplett.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Can I have a copy? Can I turn that into the deans when they're interviewing me for promotion to full or whatever is next? It's a great pleasure to be here. I was emailing a friend the other day to have him look at some poems, and I ended up saying, I really miss the camaraderie of graduate school, and here it is, right? It never goes away, and there's so much talent in the room. And thanks for being here. My undergraduates came, and I'm looking forward to working with a lot of you in the winter, right? Winter. Okay, now I have to invoke the occult and all kinds of wonderful things. And now, so what should I read? No, this one, here's one. Cameron gave me permission to bring you all down because there's been a lot of laughing, and that will all stop now. Because all of my poems are about, the horrors of the world, and yeah. So this one's called Supply Chain, and it's about my backyard, and about, Heather McHugh used to like to say it's not about. Spliced into the description are quotes from a website called slaveryfootprint.com, and you can go on there and you can enter in basically the number of things that you own and your electronics and how many cars and how many rooms, and it will tell you globally how many slaves are working for you. I have 17. You will probably have fewer. And then to help the situation, you can give money to the website. But it's stuck in my mind, obviously, enough to write a poem about it. Okay, supply chain. Drippingly by grips, this hummus and perlite nearly sings through my fingers, circling the ditch lily's heat-sunk side. Anthers frayed, fallen, sift. Learn your footprint. If occasion, rise too. Another bloom opposite grows blood orange, its splayed open hand, in shade still opulent, curls tender, having the time of its life. A survey says, let's get the basics. Sight says, turning, the cat's sprawled beside the baby rat it's found, and above the scalp-thin lawn, through the window, the children are watching. Where do you live? What's under your roof? What brushes up by now is summer-burnt grass in scorch and stubble with the rat who will not move. lent pallor, light gray lumpen weight. How many rooms do you own? Keep digging, Mom, get to China, they call out. When I work the plant free, its dirt tumbling thick with rooted tendrils reaching. Are you a gadget geek, a regular Joe, or technophobe? Plus crumbs, wedged in pine cones, tunnels, earthworm ruts. There's nothing I can't touch here if I want to or disturb, teeming some of what we're built on, soil damps beside dry pockets, clay at the spade end, gone that unctuous apricot yellow. Refine your results. How many shirts, sneakers, eyeshadows? The cat's long patient knows what his hurt can do. He waits, ginger lines of his fur circling, a chain. What's on your plate? In your medicine cabinet, jewelry box, garage. When I look closer, I can see the infant rodent is trembling. Another child, not mine, not yours, labors deep in what we like to call else, ordered to find the shine, sorting pebbles through her fingers. Make progress. With distance, something permitted. Age 7, finding mica for makeup, whatever sparkles, squatting on that ground, her thin arms, her sharp elbows, tinker-toyed in V's. Take action. Witness not permitted because of distance. When the prey finally moves, jumps a few inches, the cat closes in, takes the injured, flaccid thing into his jaws for the kill and carries it almost like a kitten across the lawn. Imagine permitted to mend this much. My hand that crushes the dark stamens and the littlest child upstairs who, for the rat's last squeal, begins to scream, best, best. This is the best day of my life at the window before I turn away. Kids love to watch a rat get killed. This is called Elegy for the Personal Past. Much air scrubbed the onces were, upthrown, penny bright, all agape those instants of ago. Someone called fool's head, turned tail. Another tried to true the earnings up until that glitter blitzed skyline red of null, new minted of didn't. Legal tender came in smidges. Once I saw the sidewalk brained and body slammed, making the memories more fluxy, suicidal effigies bearing would-be and when. Now, this kowtow, this through swerve, still unnerves the skid, you see, raws a one as any rain can disinter a worm. Inveigh against interim, we must. This tongue a hill to be taken, never. Each of us starkly changed beneath a flesh fall, but several years toil enjoyed, and most miracle this cradle song bequeathed. When you think of freedom's rough, a bumbling buzz, its siring desire, where we followed every want, wish, wag, keep a single circle open for the sake of the thing not settled, the dazzle in drag. Recital for mixed race player. Off-key, off-color, disguised as clavichord in cardboard, split level, fretting over something forgotten. Beholden to majors and minors, latter of whom could least afford losing members. Daily followed the iron-railed flights, fancies leading up, leading down, with sponsors frazzled, doing their best with the mess. Also made sparkling repertoires of much affection, bought the bridge pins in bulk for dampening effects. One afternoon, an alleged to be larger audience arrived, took their places in the basement. Other children, women, fellow players, all. At first, faces rose under lip, so lovely the hushed hailing of pedaled action, song swooning, randy with make-believe and erasure. I imagined they heard the same. Mistakes occurred. Then a mild legato in the tune crashed into the what are yous of rat-a-tat and reach. Fumbled for the single chord expected. Weights above, pressings of pad. Soon bone and knuckle whole notes, tenderly or in rush, became a timber uncovering stolen ivory keys taken from a beast. Stay back. Stay confusion, I thought. Sinking inside pound and pianoforte, the herd, some treble and bass that muddling made us. So some of the, one of those was descriptive meditative. We've been talking about that structure, that dinosaur structure in my undergraduate class. And this one is too, it's a little bit longer. It's called The Rumor of Necessity, and it takes place in Bangkok, and it's probably one of the only ones I'll read from Rumor. My mother's from Bangkok, and she's featured here. It is true that you can, at one time when they were building a hotel in Pantani, they realized that if they, well, while they were building it, birds would come and make nests in the scaffolding, and then the crash happened of 2008, and they realized that they could make more money selling birds' nests for bird nest soup, which is this rich delicacy that's made out of bird nests, and it's supposed to restore potency and make you live longer, and so that's what they did instead of finishing the building. And then you might remember that some years back there was a crackdown on drug dealers in Thailand, and huge numbers of people were arrested. The Rumor of Necessity. Pantani, Thailand, and elsewhere, because some of it takes place in suburban Maryland. The Rumor of Necessity. Again, in the Hotel of the Headwaters, it's all about the bird's nest soup. Step 1 for the ancient elixir. Boil 1 bird's nest, some rich stock, dry sherry, add egg whites to get this age-old cure for impotence, which also brings long life. These days, 50 of the half-teacup sculptures glued with swift work and saliva can fetch a couple of K on the open market. You can go there and see them, as I have, spot where the winged architects shoot back and forth inside a brick skull built near the river's beginnings, spitballing their one thought of home. Watch boys and men by the dozens for pennies a day shimmy up the walls, hammer and chisel strapped to their slender limbs, each species willing to do what it takes. First the male and then the female flies back to the empty ledge. In hot water, the nests separate into long, chewy strands. You can garnish with green onions and ham. 2. Meanwhile, the head of state stating there has to be a firm hand. Until down the road, everyone wants to know who the heroes are, who the villains are. And maybe you read the one about the 2 boys arrested from a village with no name, or pictured the police rushing in, the boys suspected of dealing, coming as they did from the triangle of dirt that starts behind our hotel, where once upon a people, poppies were the cure. There must be a firm hand. The boys forced into detox, then shoved down into the ground still alive. Later, someone in charge starts to think, and we can parse that too, the winged synapse flying back and forth inside his skull to build the bright idea, pouring onto their heads the hot coals and ashes, the urine and boiling soup. Next day, my mother closed the paper, drove us to a temple where midday sun splits the gold face of the god she believes in practically in half. Outside, sounds of brake squeals out on Mass Ave. Kids below counting Nung Song Sam Si, the same words she once taught me. We bent down to lay our heads against the green acrylic carpet's little circle round the shrine, said our prayers for the one boy who survived. After weeks in the hospital, it's the feet that can't be mended, the skin shorn so cleanly off. I'm not saying in that building we were heard. Back in the homeland, the birds in motion, attracted by music, attracted by light. If you stand still, you can hear them, ready to migrate. Centuries of laying in caves given up on. And when twilight arrives through the phone book thicknesses of open slits in the hotel walls, you get their slice in air. Scissor-sharp wings at full dart and glide. They're coming and going, if you can make it out, like pages shifted in wind, echo and shriek over eons, shaping their talent to eat a single mosquito in flight. There's the long build-up. There's the boy who didn't make it. I'm related to the heroes, related to the villains. I want to give you the firm hand, thrust it out now for you to take every hour, every harvest, with the wide 100 blade on a whetstone bird scream going up. This next one is partly about my father-in-law. And it mentions scene-act ratio, which is from Kenneth Burke's The Grammar of Motive. You don't really have to know that, but it also mentions James Thurber's short story called A Container for the Thing Contained. Andrew's father used to, after dinner, always walk around saying, you know, when you're cleaning up, I need a container for the thing contained. And also, it mentions how the Judas tree, my neighbor told me, is brittle and cracks easily. It is partly named the Judas tree because of this mythology that when Judas Iscariot wanted to go and kill himself, or when he had done to his mentor, Jesus, he picked the Judas tree, but the Judas tree breaks easily, so he couldn't actually hang himself. Yeah, I think that's all I mentioned. It has 3 sections, but I'm not going to read the numbers. Another scene-act ratio in the kitchen. Your favorite being the plot of ground called motive, making all the edges blur. As after supper, the Judas tree softens its otherwise barbed wire branches along the fence line. Army greens, gray. Bluish recessions where the waxier leaf sheens leave off and shape gets replaced by shadow. Of course, dishes to rinse, breadcrumbs on the empty chairs. And if we say the act emblazons the agent, let it be not in the name of our fathers' fathers, but this one, singular, standing on my dingy linoleum with his sliver of steak, needing a container for the thing contained. He needs to find this time the mate, 2x3 Tupperware, never near its match. Plastic, marked, do not boil, disposable, spawning worries, the pound, etc. For the red meat, spawning worries, the cancer, etc. That's not to be thrown away, spawning poverty, as a child recalled. Because ritual meats from a slain beast should be saved. The right lid found to cover the fluorescently lit pour drilling scene. Another kitchen night, another, where the hell is it this time? Getting late, tired. He's had his half-century opening and closing drawers. A prisoner of war once, we don't speak of it. The ones he shot, we don't. Above the sink, his hands in the window glass split into squares of rivering flesh, holding flesh. He passes by, on. And if the cluttered horizon's another smudge line you take to be evidence, let X stand for the brittle branches. Factor in the tree's namesake, the one infamous J. Iscariot who led his own single hanging from its limbs. Leaves heart-shaped, betrayed with blunt apex, pinks prolific in spring. The Y-splayed trunk lets the open pods dangle until there is no end of substitutions in mind, the drift drippingly down a slippery slope, another word run, ghosting, ratio, ration, rationale, ear, here, year, and yes. Starts up an ache this plot of ground at the base, progress. As in what was done and left the smokestacks, ice caps, screen time, dry rot, all the while, that apology I kept waiting to get or give to the world's tallest hotel, reverse avalanching from a first stick, become a tool, become a god. Why goes the rock pile, a means of production? Why not springs the branch of an army, the fighter saying now, there, right in front of us all along the cover, the container made to last for years that I can pick up, snap closed, my pieces of silver flashing in air. Okay. Last one. It's in the voice of, not a loaf of bread, but in the voice of a bullet. Thank you so much for being here and for putting all this together, and it's just a joy every time. And for that beautiful intro. Bullet speaks. Came from cartridge to catalyst, each in his cell, claiming freedom. A person, a plan, a thought, a face. Facing the crowd, concaved like me in my chamber, recalibrating every single second into the flat-nosed entry point that was a head's parting, piercing its singular fuckload of lovely moments. And yes, I ripped whomsoever's brain chiffon of memories, because if you take any uniquely fragile lateral region of the next crown, it's king and saintly cerebellum, saying species, saying try with infantry to improve the lot of you and yours. I can and will rush forward, if triggered, with my good old whack-a-mole, much-intentioned energy, the kill. No question, metal beats flesh, hands down. Why not eat a visage if aimed at upper function spun silk infinities? Love, lust, power proven to improve, control, dissect, because of force equal to its opposite. After my steel cave, long hibernation comes, the ignition, a ritual irresistible, his easy tear corpus, a trajectory made to be, the victim's last thought, how I am all the noun there is. Thank you.
Thank you, Pimone. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Let's have another round of applause for all of our readers. So our next Castalia is November 11th, always a Wednesday. Reading will be Gabrielle Bates, Lauren Schlesinger, Kim Halstead, and alumnus Patrick Millian, and faculty Maya Sonnenberg. So it'll be a treat. We hope to see you all again. Thank you again for coming. And thank you to the Hugo House.